Live. I'm Naomi Simson, and tonight we'll be talking with the director of She Starts, Nicola Hazell, and two of the business owners who are part of the She Starts Accelerator program. We've got Naomi Stewart here, the founder of Farm Pay, and Jessica Christensen Franks, the co-founder of Neighbourlytics. I think I got that out, Neighbourlytics. But before we get started, let's hear a little bit from you, Nicola, about the program, about She Starts, and what is an accelerator program?
So I'm Nicola Hazell, I'm the director of She Starts at Blue Chili. She Starts is a program to change the face of startups. It's about changing the fact that women are grossly underrepresented in our tech and startup economy by turbocharging female leadership in this space and showcasing the stories of incredible women who are starting global tech companies. At Blue Chili, we're driven by people, purpose and passion, and we're passionate about how you bring entrepreneurs, corporates and investors to tackle some of the world's biggest problems. And through our flagship program in She Starts, we're bringing together that whole collaboration ecosystem, bringing together different players who can play a key role in helping take great ideas and turn them into scalable, successful companies.
So what's an accelerator program?
So an accelerator program is something that takes an idea and a startup and it moves it really fast to get it to scale. So 95% of startups fail in the wild, which means that when they're out there, people with ideas, having great ideas, in that first 12 months of trying to turn that idea into a sustainable business, it doesn't go anywhere, or it ends up falling through the cracks. So an accelerator program is about taking that idea and looking at all of the different pain points that can occur and creating a process to help you step through those pain points and avoid those failures, if you like. So an accelerator program takes that idea and moves it faster and gets it ready to actually access further funding so it can keep growing.
So when you say that, do you mean that you provide accounting services? Like, what do you mean by accelerator? Because if you're sitting out there, you've got this great business idea, and you're thinking, well, actually, I don't know how to create a design. I don't know how to create a website. I don't know whether I've got a viable model. What do you mean by, what are the
bits and pieces we do? So at Blue Chili, our accelerator program, when we're working with founders like these two here in She Starts, our accelerator program works through 3 different layers. First of all, how you build that business. So we have a curriculum that actually takes our founders week through week how to build a sustainable and scalable startup business.
So it's education.
So education and curriculum at that layer. And you work with a team of in-house entrepreneurs in residence. So these are the business advisors who've been there, done that, succeeded, failed, sought investment and built successful companies.
So mentoring
who work one-on-one, like a coach even, as those founders go through that process. And then on top of that, in our accelerator program, they're also learning how to pitch. They're accessing incredible mentors and advisors outside.
I like a pitch.
Very good. And they practice their pitch every single week. And they're working with experts and entrepreneurs all across the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And at Blue Chili, we work with non-technical founders as well as technical founders because we have an entire engineering team who help them build that first tech product, the MVP, or what we like to call a CVP, a commercially viable product.
I'm just going to translate for everybody. That's a minimal viable product. And what's a CVP?
That's a commercially viable product. So this is about getting the traction, right?
I like that one.
And so we move in an accelerator program over 6 months from an idea to a commercially viable product where you can get traction in the market and can actually get customers, have people paying for your products.
Jess and Naomi, how far are you into the accelerator program? How long have you been there for?
We started in January. At the end of January it kicked off.
So 6 months?
6 months and it wraps up in August.
In August. And have you got CVP?
Working towards an MVP, Naomi.
Oh, I love it when they talk like that. So you're working towards your minimum viable product.
Yes.
And where are you up to on your journey, Jess?
We launched what we're calling a minimum viable product 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
but we're still working out the bugs and working with pilot customers on that to get it to a point where we can earn revenue from it.
Fantastic. I like the sound of revenue.
Yeah,
me too.
We'll come back to that and we'll learn more about your businesses tonight because I'm really interested to hear, especially at how you launch and getting ready to soar. of a joke. Tonight we'll be discussing how you do take an idea and turn it into a successful business. And I do want you to submit your questions into the comments section below, and we'll be asking them live on air. And now we've got 3 panellists, and I'll add a little bit in there too. So let's go to the first question. Tan has asked the question, where is the best place to start if you already have the concept? And what can be expected in the first couple of years? Tan's asking for a crystal ball.
Wow.
How's that going at the accelerator? What do you think?
Well, I think that the first place to start is, are you solving a problem? Because you might have a great concept, but you need to be solving a problem. So, and then I think the next step is, as we like to say, validate. And certainly I've spent a large portion of my time going and talking to my customers to work out if the product, FarmPay, that we're developing meets their needs, and certainly that has involved a pivot for myself, and I know for lots of the other founders.
I'm just going to take us back a little bit. So first of all, the problem you're solving, Naomi, what's the problem?
So the problem we're solving on FarmPay comes from quite a personal journey that I experienced. So I own farms north of Wagga Wagga, and a couple of years ago we sold a large amount of grain to a grain buyer, and the 30-day payment terms, which are standard in the industry, applied. So the 30 days came, and we called the grain buyer and I said, we'll pay you tomorrow. But in fact, they didn't, and they stopped taking our call. Now, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars, and for a small business owner like we are, it's
absolutely
a huge impact.
Yeah.
And so that really got me thinking.
Did they ever pay?
They did. We were fortunate.
I was a bit worried.
So it did get me thinking though, how can we improve the transparency over that supply chain process when you do sell your grain on farm? So that was where we started with the problem, which I think is so important, that you do define that problem and then move forward with the solution.
So then you went to minimal viable product. And what did that look like? Is that the creation of relationships or processes?
So we went to a boot camp at Blue Chili, and as part of the She Starts program, and really the focus of that boot camp was saying, okay, you've defined what you believe the problem is, and you have what you think the solution is. Now go out there and actually talk to, in our case, farmers and grain buyers, and we were set a goal, within that first week, I think it was like talk to 50 of your potential customers to work out, are you really solving the problem that you think you are? And
do other people feel the same problem?
Absolutely, because when it's a very personal story like ours was, I felt very comfortable that I understand the perspective of the farmer, but am I really understanding the full problem, which is really important. And what we did find was that the reason why payments are delayed is often because of the transparency over that whole process and lack of timeliness of transfer of data. So that enabled us to come up with a solution that works for both the grower and also for the grain buyer.
See, Tan, I think you've got some really, really great insights there. First of all, who is the customer? Is it a real problem? And validating over and over again. But Tan, it was such a good question. I think we can help you on your journey by sending you a copy of Ready to Soar. So Tan, can you please inbox the folks at ANZ, and they'll make sure that they send you out a copy. And that will really help you identify what the problem is. And it's like we're all singing from the same songbook. So now we've got a question from Shannon. How do you start up a tech business when you have no technical background, but can see a gap in the market? Where do we start? Now, can I just tell you, this is one thing that Steve Baxter and I fight about on Shark Tank all the time. Because he says if you're going to be a tech business, you've got to have a tech founder, and I say no. And Andrew Banks also says no. But Jess, what's your view on this?
Well, I am not from a technical background in any way, shape or form, and so my view is you don't have to have a technical background to be a great founder.
I'm managing to get by, that's right.
That's right. But I think, the challenge with not having a technical background is it's very difficult to know where to start. And so when I came into the accelerator, I'm from an urban design background. I've been doing that for 15 years. I'm an expert in the problem. I know the problem we're trying to solve. I know why the problem exists. I know who feels it and what levels they feel it, and I'm passionate about solving it. But the first question I had coming in is, well, what can tech actually do? And I kept getting told from lots of different people, forget about the tech. The tech's just an enabler to solving a problem. You need to really nail getting the problem right, as Naomi was saying, understanding whether the market want to fix it, or want to have it addressed, and then the tech is the enabler to create that. And so I was kind of forced to sideline the tech for a long time, and I think if you came in with a technical background, you'd be seeing that as your medium and perhaps being more solution driven rather than problem driven.
Or rather than customer driven.
Exactly.
Now, is it so though that you have technical resources as part of the accelerator program, so you can kind of go, okay, I can trust that that's there in place for you, but not everybody has that. And is that the case?
Well, that's the sweet spot, I guess, with what we do at Blue Chili, is we often work with the non-technical founders to build the tech businesses that they dream of creating by bringing in those additional resources to help them identify how tech can be used as the vehicle. These are founders who have experienced a problem and are desperately passionate about solving that problem and really understand that market, therefore. And technology, they know, has the ability to scale whatever solution they're working on, thinking of it as that vehicle, and we then provide those resources to do that. But we do have founders in our program as well who do come from a technology and a development background, and they get the other side of the coin in terms of that core value of still how to accelerate a business. But certainly it's ensuring that regardless of whether you're technical or non-technical, you can build up your literacy to have the conversations with technical staff, whether it's your co-founder or it's a team of people that you're working with to build that initial product.
I think it's a really good point that you make, Nicola, is about literacy. I remember speaking to a founder who had an online platform, and she was asking me, how I did it. One of the things that I did was I wasn't scared. I was not scared of anything to do with technology. And my suggestion to her was just to go and do a coding course. Not that she was going to code, I didn't recommend that necessarily, because, we play to our strengths. But then she just wouldn't be fearful. And understanding the difference between a wireframe and a storyboard, knowing the difference between the two might be quite valuable to her. She did that, and it transformed her confidence when it came to technology. Secondly, I also don't think that you necessarily need a technology founder, depending on your business. If you're selling technical product, I think you do. But also because tech changes so much. When I started my business, and I know it was a very long time ago, we had to build. There was no such thing as buy, whereas now you really need to be making the selection based on buying. So Shannon, just to finish off what I think was a really great question, the other thing that I did as my business grew was put around me some technical advisors, so that I had an independent view. So it wasn't always vendors that were telling me what was best. I feel fortunate that one of those was Scott Farquhar, who we know from Atlassian, and another one was Adrian Giles, who had the Hitwise business at the time. So I put some really clever people around me, asked them some questions, and got an independent view, which I think can be very valuable. But build your own technical literacy, and don't be scared. It's not that hard. It's just not. So now we've got a great question from Stephen. For a small two-person business, what's the best way to manage and promote via social media? Oh my goodness, the best way.
Wow.
Who wants to take that on?
The best way for a small two-person.
So you launched Minimal Viable Product 2 weeks ago, right,
2 weeks
Jess?
ago, yes.
So have you been using social media at any time regarding that?
Not at the moment, actually. I think the answer to the question is it depends on the audience you're trying to reach.
Completely concur.
So our audience is the property sector. So we're not looking for individual buyers. We're looking for other companies that we can work with. And so the best channels for us are Twitter and LinkedIn. But you don't just post photos on those channels. You need to go there with content and be replying and sharing and tweeting and really adding value to different discussions. So it's not necessarily about having a content calendar for us of images and interesting, funny things that we're doing, which might work for other founders. But for us, we need to be looking at what are the important conversations happening on those mediums and how can we add value to those, and then be invited to contribute to them by the creators as well. But I think it's got to be tested. Absolutely. And that's what we're playing around with at the moment with our early customers, is what channels are they on, how are they talking about their work, and how can we partner with them through those channels so they're talking about us rather than us talking about what we're doing with them.
Which is really, the fundamental of marketing doesn't doesn't change. I know the tools have changed, but the fundament, be in the shoes of your potential customer.
Yeah.
Where are they? Where do they hang out? And also, how do they want to hear from you? They may not necessarily want to have an intimate relationship with you and have them, you come up on the Facebook feed. You might be a transaction they have as a one-off. But Nicola, in terms of attracting people to your program, you use a lot of social media, don't you?
Absolutely.
So how do what do you find in terms of getting people into your program works for you?
I mean, the great thing about social media is it is both able to reach the masses, but also able to be a lot more intentional than, say, putting an ad in a newspaper and hoping that the people who might be interested in what you're doing will be there. With social media platforms like Facebook, you can target the right audiences. So you can find, for example, women who are interested in business, women who are interested in technology and startups and social impact, women who are interested in all of the different things that we were looking for in the She Starts program, and indeed that now, as we do a documentary series through social media distribution channels with these She Starts founders, we're able to make sure that the audience who is going to be interested in this content is actually being reached when we use those distribution channels. So with social media, it's about understanding who you want to speak to, when and how, getting your literacy up about, okay, well, when is the best time to post on social media? So be quite intentional about it, otherwise it is a waste of your time, let alone your money. But it's also quite an affordable space for marketing. So you can do Facebook ads and the like and get really decent traction out of that without having to spend a fortune. But it's really knowing who you're trying to reach on what platforms, knowing that Twitter is a place where nobody wants to get ads or anything that feels like it's marketing. They just want to have a conversation. On Facebook, it's informal and it's social, and on LinkedIn, it's professional. So knowing those different platforms as well, and to the question which says, as a two-person business, how do we do it? You don't have time to make lots and lots of content. That's the reality. Writing blogs, those sorts of things, they do take time to do. So be really smart about where you're going to actually spend that time and resources.
Yeah. So, a really great question. The fundamentals are know your customers, know where they hang out, and how do they want to hear from you. I'd also argue, work out your key single-minded message. What is it that you want to be world famous for? And perhaps put a small amount of budget. With any marketing we do, analyse, do. Over and over again. I think you will validate. Where do, analyse, do in marketing. So I would over and over again keep checking, and it's never ever set and forget. But if you don't want to be an expert in digital marketing, then I suggest that you read a lot and find somebody who you trust to do that, because it is actually never ending. So Ryan's got a question for us. I have a great idea for a business. How can I best test my business idea without going all in right away? i.e., how do I validate it? So Ryan wants validation, and he doesn't want to get all in yet. What do you suggest?
We've got a lot of science for it, but you tell your personal stories first, I think is the best thing.
So Jess, why don't we start with you?
My personal validation story is we came into the accelerator program with a completely different idea, and by day 2 had dropped that and completely changed to a new pathway of solving the same problems, pathway to getting to
So
that.
the problem hasn't changed,
That's
the
right.
approach has.
The approach has completely changed. And so our validation was, as Naomi said, was getting out to people and speaking to them, because I believed, as I said before, I'm an expert in the problem, but I'm only coming at it from my own perspective. And so I had discovered, as soon as I started speaking to more people and speaking to them in a very structured way, that I had previously been creating confirmation bias, is the term that we use, with the people I've been speaking to. So I've been speaking to my friends and my
you were
peers.
telling everybody it was a good idea.
And they go, yeah, great
Family
idea.
and friends, yeah, right.
Which is lovely of them, but it doesn't help me make a great business.
Yeah.
And so being much more intentional about the way you talk about it and how you ask those questions and let them answer rather than just agree with you. And it's a very different type of conversation to have. And particularly when you're starting a business, and my co-founder and I found this problem with each other, we love to just pat each other on the back. You're doing great. You're a cheer squad. Your mum's your cheer squad. Your co-founder's your cheer squad. Your early customers can be your cheer squad, but you're not necessarily getting the right kind of validation, which is money in the bank or early sign-ups or whatever that might be for you. So you've got to snap out of that and identify it when it's happening.
Great. Naomi?
I think Jess is absolutely right, and you need to get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, because going to the people that you know are going to tell you what you want to hear is not the best approach. And we all naturally want to hear that. We want to hear that. Yeah,
So lovely.
So I think you need to push yourself to approach people that you're not normally connected with, and ask them and accept that sometimes you're going to hear what you don't expect and maybe what you don't want to hear. But I always view any feedback, I like it when someone says, oh, you should, that doesn't work. Or, because why won't that work? And it just gives you further insight into your own product, and you always learn something different. Doesn't matter whenever I speak with a farmer or a grain buyer, I'm always learning and probing and prompting, because I want my platform to be amazing, and the only way it's going to be amazing is if I keep engaging and asking those questions and having sometimes those difficult conversations.
Ryan, we don't know what your product is, but one thing I do suggest is that you find some experts in that particular game. Whether you get them to sign a non-disclosure agreement or whether you're happy to share your idea, if you want to get all in, at some point you are going to need to share that idea. I remember I was telling everybody who'd listen about my business, and I clearly remember the people who told me it wasn't going to work and that it was a crazy idea, and I remind them regularly that I've managed to get by. People come and see us on Shark Tank, and when they walk into the tank and when we ask them, how do you know this is a great idea? And they say, oh, well, my family, my friends, and we go, they're absolutely the wrong. You need somebody who's going to be a little bit brutal, because once you have spent your hard-earned cash, you're more committed, which can be great, but also, you're stacking things against you, and your risk and return might become too rich for you. So I think it's quite great. But Ryan, on your journey, read this first. This is also going, it says, turn your brilliant idea into a business you love. So maybe read this first and it'll help you work through. But do find some experts and advisors in your particular chosen field. So Val has got a question. What is the best marketing channel for the startup business with a small budget? Come on, Nicola.
Oh, the best marketing channel. Again,
The one where customers are.
Again, know where your customers are. If you've got a small if you've got a small budget and you're trying to make sure you spend your marketing funds well and smartly, find out where you can get the best bang for your buck. And every channel is going to sell you why they're the best place. Social media, all of the different platforms, events. But sometimes, and I think if we look at the founders here, every one of the startup founders in the She Starts program, and indeed across the Blue Chili portfolio, they market differently because they've got different targets and different audiences. And none of them have got massive budgets, because in reality, in the first 6 months as a business, you don't have a huge runway. But for Jess, who might be trying to talk to property developers and big enterprise clients, advertising on Facebook, total waste of time. Might be cheap, might be able to access lots of people, but not going to be where she's going to find those key customers and clients. For Naomi, who's trying to talk to farmers and also to big grain buyers, go and speak at agricultural conferences might be a better way for her to spend her time than spending money on posts in the newspaper or on Twitter for that matter. So small budget, again, it just comes back to knowing where the people you're trying to reach are actually going to be accessed.
It's so true. I always like to ask the question, where do customers hang out? But who else is already talking to them? Yeah. So my number one, well, actually, it's how we grew RedBalloon when I had no money at all. And there was no such thing as social media when I launched my business. So funny, this melding now. People say marketing and they slip straight into social media. Yeah. And in fact, marketing isn't about that at all. Marketing is about having the right product at the right place for the right price, And that's really what marketing is. But we kind of meld it into social media. But the way I grew my business was when big enterprises chose us as part of their program. So when American Express put us into their catalogue, all of a sudden I had authority and I also had distribution. So I asked myself the question, who else is already speaking to these customers, and maybe we can do something together.
Absolutely.
So, you know, that's my suggestion there. But let's move on. Jess, there's a question from Jess. All entrepreneurs have did you write this yourself?
Maybe.
Or is it another Jess? All entrepreneurs have moments of self-doubt. What were your strategy to keep pushing through? So Jess?
Well, I didn't write that question because I wouldn't have called them moments. I would have called them periods of my life.
Yeah.
You know, the self-doubt, the biggest thing to learn about self-doubt is that everybody actually has it, and it's just what you do with it. And so, you know, I've had imposter syndrome for a long time, many years, in fact, you know, being in a leadership role for a number of years. And so the self-doubt is, you know, you need to be using it constructively. And it's very easy when there's so much happening and you're trying to move quickly and there's a lot of advisors and a lot of change in the business and you're looking at validating, to be constantly asking questions to your customers and your advisors and getting information overload and forgetting to then step back and say, what do I think? What's my gut? You know, I'm the one that's driving this vision in the end. And so, you know, what's my strategy for the self-doubt, which is, you know, trying to balance everyone's opinions often, is to go back to focus and speak with my co-founder. Why are we in this, and where does that if we reset by thinking about that, where does that leave us with what the right decision is to make? And then you just got to get on with it.
Yeah. So coming back to your why.
Yes.
Why do we do what we do?
Exactly.
And your sense of purpose and contributing to others. One of the things that I do is read customer stories. Now, I know you're very early, but once you have the experience of a difference you made to another human being, it doesn't occur as work. And I feel very fortunate because, you know, the businesses that I work in, RedBalloon being one, we represent 1,500 small businesses. That's what we do. We're a marketing company on behalf of 1,500 small businesses, and all we do is deliver them lots and lots and lots of business. And all I've got to do is hang out with one of them. I bumped into one in Logan in Queensland recently. How'd you do? When you're in Logan.
When you're in Logan.
And he said, oh, we've been a supplier of yours for 9 years. And I go, oh, right, fantastic. He goes, you deliver me 80% of all my customers. And I go, oh, great.
Wow.
You know, and I was like, oh, you know, really making it easy. Funny you should talk about the imposter syndrome, because I actually talk about that in here. And I also talk about us comparing ourselves with others. So often we go, oh, especially you probably go, she's doing well. She's doing well. And really that we're on our own journey. I was in Silicon Valley last week, and you know, there's businesses who started way after mine, or 10 times, you know, a gazillion times bigger. But knowing your sense of purpose, the problem that you're solving. But I read customer stories, and when I read customer stories, I feel validated that I made a difference, and then I just get, everyone makes mistakes, seriously. But I do talk about that. So I think, Ryan, if you could inbox your address, we'll send you out this. That'll make it really clear. It was Jess, wasn't it?
It was Jess.
Sorry, Jess. I've got confused between Jess and Ryan. Don't know how I did that. But Ryan will send you out one or two, and Jess. There we go. So Karina's got a question. How important is building partnerships in growing a business? I think essential. Anybody else got an idea on that one?
Absolutely.
What do you think? Yeah. Look, what about you with your grain?
Absolutely. From the beginning, I've had a really strong focus on building partnerships and relationships. They're just so key to the fundamentals of our business. And you know, we've managed through the process and through those relationships to we've signed on a large grain buyer to our pilot, but we've also been able to develop a relationship with Visa as well, which will enable us really to play on that global stage through that partnerships. And that's a lot about relationships and developing and nurturing those, and you know, accepting that sometimes you get the no's, but then also, you know, I feel really, I guess, blessed that I've been able to go through this journey and also to develop those relationships and continue to nurture them. They're so fundamental.
We're so lucky.
All business is made up of people. You know, in fact, those businesses who have really strong and deep relationships will survive through disruption, because our business is done by people. And I know personally I like doing business with people I like.
And it's the aligned and shared values as well. So, what would I look for in a partnership? It is that we share the same values and alignments in principles, really, because that's what it comes back to when you're looking at, when times are difficult and you're going back to what's my purpose, then you want to make sure that, you're aligned with people that share those same values and purpose.
Absolutely. Shared values, I think, is essential. Absolutely. So really great insights. Do you want to say something on that too?
Partnerships, I guess, are for us at the heart of how we work with startup founders to grow their businesses. And, you asked at the beginning, what's an accelerator? The intention there is to take you from an idea into distribution much quicker. And so partnerships are crucial for that. We have partnerships with companies like ANZ, and ANZ is one of the major backers and partners for She Starts, which means that all the founders in the program are building those relationships and looking at those potential partnership opportunities for themselves through partners. As you were pointing out, small marketing budget, you need to engage with large customers, building partnerships with companies that have huge distribution networks and large customer bases present opportunities for what is a small business to really scale really quickly, and it doesn't happen without those kinds of partners.
I think that's really true. And partnership is a two-way thing, because also on the flip side of that is that they've got an opportunity to talk to their customers about something interesting and different.
Absolutely.
And innovative that may really, really help them. So partnership is always a two-way street. So let's move to Louisa's question, because we've still got a fair few questions to get through. So Louisa, any new business involves risk. What tips can you provide about taking the plunge while surviving on the reduced income?
Baked beans.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot.
I do remember about 3 years into my journey, I don't think I've paid myself for 10 years, but about 3 years in, one of my colleagues, Gemma, who's still with me, she said, Naomi, you really need to buy some new clothes. She said, you look atrocious and you're supposed to be the CEO. So, I was like, oh, okay, off I went. So what does give you comfort to take the plunge? Now, you've got a certain infrastructure around you with She Starts, but even so, you picked up the phone or you wrote in to apply for the program, and that was really your first step.
I think you wouldn't do it if you didn't have the passion for the product or service that you're delivering. And I think that, once again, I know we've said it several times, but coming back to your purpose, if I wasn't driven by the purpose of Farm Pay, which is to ultimately, I go back to my story about farmers getting paid. And so, that's what keeps me going, when things might be difficult or it's been a really long week, then if you can keep going back to that purpose, then I think that keeps you going.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important to be constantly checking in with your time horizons, because you hear a lot of noise in the sole practitioner space or startup space that they've been slogging at it for years and bootstrapping and have no money, and we've been remortgaging the house, and it could be I hear that a lot, right? And I don't want to get drawn into, well, that's what I have to do as well, because I can't do that, to be frank. And so what I do with my co-founder, but also with my husband and with my family and the other people around me, is regularly check in on what are we trying to achieve in the next 6 months, and how do we know if we're getting it right, and how do we pivot quickly if we're not, and then thinking about the 18-month horizon, and of course 5 years. That feels very abstract, but we need to be regularly doing that, because otherwise you could very easily get 6 months in and say, well, it's kind of working, I think, and maybe I keep not getting a salary or taking a salary, or what are we trying to do? And so just being really intentional with the risks that you're taking, rather than being overwhelmed by the noise about, well, you have to be a bit of a martyr when you're starting your own business. There's a lot of narrative around that, and I don't think you have to accept that. Although I don't have a salary.
Wonderful, really, really great words about regularly checking in and being intentional. And so life doesn't happen to you, you choose your life.
Yes.
I think that's really important. But I'm going to make sure that we send out a copy to Louisa, because there's a whole section here on are you financially prepared for what level of journey in the entrepreneurial way, and it tackling the turn down. And so we'll send you out one of those. There's a whole bunch of exercises to do and things to get yourself financially ready for the journey of being an entrepreneur, so that you're emotionally ready. Because I think that's one thing we don't tend to talk about, is the emotional journey that you go on. And all of you are sitting there going, yeah. We'd like to think that business is all pragmatic, it's all spreadsheets, it's all, revenue in and profits out. Yeah, that's actually the easy bit. It is an emotional journey. Are you up for the game? Do you want to keep playing? I remember I've tried to fire myself on many occasions when I've really had enough. But anyway, George has got a question for us. What do you think are the benefits of starting a business in an incubator versus doing it on your own? Now, do you want to define the difference between an incubator and an accelerator?
Yeah, sure. Really, really simple difference between an incubator and an accelerator. An incubator, think of it literally as the word. So an incubator is a space. It's a warm space. You go and you're in that space and you're surrounded by other eggs like you, people starting their businesses, and therefore you access support from each other as you slowly grow your business and you're incubating that idea. An accelerator is a program, so it's a programmatic
education,
response
mentoring,
to very quickly
systems.
Put its foot on the pedal and take you through with all of these systematic processes to get you there faster. To go to the question of go into an incubator, and in this case perhaps they mean incubator or accelerator, versus doing it out on your own, the difference of this process is it's going to move you faster than you will out on your own. But it also is going to force you to go in further quicker. So often people will be working away on an idea for some time on their own, and then they reach a point where they say, right, I'm ready to really see if this is going to cut the mustard and get through that process and survive. An incubator in itself will still have extra supports around you, so it's like it's going to add an extra layer of support to tell you if it's worth pursuing, but also to give you access to perhaps some guest speakers and that kind of thing at most incubators. An accelerator is really going to be tough to get into, so it's going to tell you pretty quick smart whether or not this idea is investable, and then it's going to push you really, really hard to find out if your idea is going to succeed or fail. So a good accelerator not only helps great businesses grow, but it also helps the idea fail fast, if you like, so that you can pivot and get to the right idea quicker.
Yeah, I also think that one of the other things is just about a peer support.
Yeah.
I started my business at home all by myself, and I didn't know that there was no ecosystem when I started. I'm really sounding very old now. But and I just think that when you have a shared sense of journey and a sense of community, it makes the world of difference. And I can imagine your founders, they'll actually be lifelong friends.
Incredible.
And a support.
Yeah, that cohort support is incredibly important while they're in the program, because you can bounce ideas off each other and support each other, but also throughout your life as you're out there, and you still have people who are going through that experience with you. But the other magic of that as well, and we see this with the founders in She Starts, is the idea sharing that happens. They're all
works
working.
There. Why don't we try that? Give it a go.
Exactly, and the collaborations that come
Love
out
it.
of that, where they see actually what I'm working on here, which is a completely different vertical or industry to what you're working on, actually this bit would apply really well to help take your idea to the next level. So being part of that process, you're learning not just from the people who are there to work with you, but the people who are working around you.
So Louisa, why don't you inbox the folks at ANZ and we'll send you out a copy of Ready to Soar, because one of the chapters I spend quite a bit of time about is talking about the ecosystem. So the difference between an incubator and accelerator, and there's a whole bunch of other sorts of programs and grants that you might find work for you. So there's a whole background in there for you. So Elle's got a question. What key skills must all entrepreneurs have? Financial literacy, I'd say. What do you think about that?
Absolutely, but I think one of the key qualities you need is resilience, and that's so important because it's a long journey. It's like a marathon, not a sprint. So you need to be really prepared for that. And I always think it's the business resilience to be able to cope with, the no's and, the low lows and then the high highs. But it's also the personal resilience, so taking care of yourself as well, because if you don't, then you won't last long. You'll burn out within 6 months. So I try and wrap resilience around everything I do and make sure that, I'm being resilient in my business, but also in my personal life.
Yeah, you do have to look after yourself. You're no use to anybody if you're not looked after yourself. Anything you want to add to that, Jess?
I'd say also a collaborative spirit, because you could become very lonely very quickly, intellectualizing your idea and your problem and trying to nut it out on your computer. And it's easy to go down that rabbit hole where you're suddenly 12 hours, smashing some stuff out. But great businesses are responsive to the customers, responsive to the market, are able to change, be agile and change quickly. And so you can only get there by being collaborative with the people around you, whether they be your peers in an accelerator program, if you're lucky enough to be in that position, or your advisors or your customers or your team. And so being precious about your solution or your idea doesn't really get you anywhere fast. And so
the difference between pig-headed and persistent.
That's
I'm
it.
more on the pig-headed side. What about you, Nicola? I mean, you know hundreds and you've met hundreds of entrepreneurs. So what do you think is the essence? What's the critical essence?
First of all, I would add to what Jess and Naomi have said, because both of those, collaboration and resilience, are key. Financial literacy, spot on, but being a curious listener.
Yeah.
And what do I mean by being a curious listener? Curiosity is the essence of entrepreneurship. It's a desire to find out if this crazy idea that you've had could actually be a great solution, and curiosity to look at problems in the world and consider how you could solve them. But a curious listener is about being curious around what your customers want, being curious around how you can listen to people's feedback. So we talk a lot about pitching, and everybody talks about pitching and being a great communicator. The key to being a great communicator and to pitching well is listening to the person, knowing them even if they haven't spoken to you, right? So being that great listener where you are listening to the feedback you get from mentors, the feedback you get from your customers, and the advice that's coming in around you, and then being curious about it enough to figure out then how do you filter and take those nuggets of gold and get the right action out of it.
I think that sounds, a curious listener, I think that sounds wonderful. Elle, there's a few things that I would add to that. One is your ability to ask powerful questions. So what is the real question that you need to ask, not the thing you think you should ask, but really asking powerful questions. I think that can be very, very valuable. And success comes from what you say no to, not what you say yes to. When you make a plan, and then all of a sudden a bright, shiny thing comes along, and I'm very attracted to bright, shiny things, then I'll rush over here, I'll rush over here. One of the things that really worked for me, Elle, was having a scoreboard in the middle of the office, and every day it reminded me of what I said I was going to do. So a reminder over and over, because saying no can be equally powerful on your journey to success. But let's rush on to Rebecca's question. What are the common mistakes you see other emerging small businesses making? How can I set mine apart? Okay, so what do we think?
Yeah, there are common mistakes that people make, and that is one I think we see in startups a lot is a solution in search of a problem.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah. So the person who's like, I've got the best idea, and this happens pretty much every weekend. I'm sure the same thing happens to you when you're at a dinner party and someone comes up, Naomi, I've got the best idea. I've thought of it. Honestly, this is the best. And it's this amazing website where people are going to go and they're going to do all of these things on it. And isn't that fantastic? And I'll be like, so who's it for? And is that customer actually feeling like that's a problem they want solved, right? And at the time, they haven't thought about the customer or the problem, just this fantastic solution, this idea that sounds so magnificent. And so I think that's one of the really common mistakes people make, is starting with the solution and then retrospectively trying to find a problem and a market for it. And that's not to say that there haven't been some amazing ideas that have been born out of just a crazy harebrained idea without a problem, but for the most part you really got to start in the right spot.
Was Henry Ford said, if I had have asked my customers, they would have wanted a faster horse. And I've invested in business that's a peg with hooks. You know, nobody knew they needed a peg with hooks until they got started.
But everybody says that actually, if Henry Ford had have asked different questions,
correct,
maybe they would have told him that they wanted a car.
Yeah, maybe they would have said that they wanted to get to A to B
Yeah,
faster.
that's right.
So, you know, I really agree with you. You got any insights? Because we're going to wrap this up very shortly. What do you think?
Probably to truly listen to your customers. So it goes back to, you know, that active
listening post too.
Yeah. Rather than, you know, just kind of, you know, you've got to actively listen and then act on that feedback. So it comes back to accepting sometimes you're going to hear what you don't want to hear, you maybe don't want to hear. And I think that's really important. Otherwise, you know, I know Jess and probably myself, we would have had completely different businesses if we hadn't started listening to that feedback.
Look, I say about listening posts because also often we only listen to the negative. You know, you've got a customer complaint, it's not working, everything's going wrong. And unless you balance that with actually all the things you're getting right, you can actually upset the 99% that you got it right for the 1% you didn't get it right for. So having listening posts that are not just about the negative is a very powerful tool.
That negativity bias,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Everything must be
rushing
wrong.
to the drama.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's right.
We all love it.
Yeah.
Love a little bit of drama.
Yeah.
Look, what fun we've had. But just let's see if we can sneak in one more question. So Stephen, he'd like to ask, got the idea, how do we create and test a business model for it? So he says he's got the idea.
Validate.
Yeah,
validate.
Validate.
Well, I mean, and when let's say what that actually looks like.
Yeah.
We had a bunch of women with amazing ideas apply for She Starts. Founders from across the country, in fact, 800 people registered to apply for this program last year to get into 10 spots. And the ideas were phenomenal.
The rest came on Shark Tank.
Yeah, that's right. We take the cream of the crop.
I don't know
that. The amazing ideas came in, you know, thick and fast, but the 20 that came into the boot camp were people who had then gone out and absolutely proven that there was a market for it. And even then, they still, to get to the number 10, we literally sent people out into the streets and said, all right, we've gotten to the nitty gritty of what this business is and the problem you're solving. Now go and stand at a train station and jump on a train and ride that train around the city and do 50 interviews with potential customers about this problem and the solution that you think you need to get to. And then let's come back and see what that data set tells us in one day, in one afternoon. And that's the bit. If you've got this great idea, what's next? You really have to go and talk to people. And I guess as you go further along, that conversation can become more and more positive. And that's the point you go, oh, great, so you love it, but will you pay for it? And will you pay for it now?
You know what I love about this, Nicola? You're making them do the work.
Yeah.
And because, like, you know how you said people have got a solution and they're looking for the problem, or they're looking...
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, I get it the one stage first. I want to be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
I've got no idea what I'm going to do or what the problem is or where the customer... I just want to start a business. And, you know, they're waiting for something to kind of show up. So
it sounds so glamorous, doesn't it? And that's the thing. It ain't. It ain't.
Resilience.
Yeah. So be
energy.
damn sure that you are really passionate
And it's
about
not for
the
everybody.
idea.
Seriously, this life is not for everybody.
It's not.
No.
It can be incredibly rewarding, but you've got to be in it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And you might even find that you go in and you have a go, and it turns out that actually this isn't the life that you want, and that's okay too. But if there's a great idea, and you know, for all of the people who are sending in questions who've got those ideas, just get out there, get started, start talking to people and find out whether or not this idea that you have really has that potential to turn into an incredible scalable business just like these two here.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. You're most welcome to join me at join.naomisimson.com, because what we do is answer each other's questions, and it's about peer-to-peer support. And really, that can be a great first initial step. If you're thinking about going on an entrepreneurial journey, hang around with a few of us crazy ones for a little while, and we might adjust your thoughts on that. But, you know, it's a private Facebook group that you can get to via join.naomisimson.com. But what fun we've had. I could speak endlessly. It's as if you have all come just because of the content on the book, because I can't believe it. In fact, I'm so glad to hear that you're going to include it as part of your program. But thank you to all of those who tuned in and the wonderful questions tonight. And thank you to Nicola, Naomi and Jess. We had a wonderful time. It's the first time I've interviewed 3 at once, and I think we've managed it, you know, nobody was taking over. But don't miss our next session on Thursday, the 27th of July at 8 p.m. I'll be speaking to Bao Hung from Rolled. I'm really looking forward to this. We love Rolled, about strategies to help you grow your business. We will be speaking a lot about business growth. As we say, it's easy to start one. It's not so easy to keep them growing, and that's what we're here for. I'm Naomi Simpson. Maybe. I'm Naomi Simpson. I've had a wonderful time. Join us at Shark Tank this week. There's another little plug. Shark Tank on Tuesday night, and see who didn't make it to She Starts, because they'll be on Shark Tank. But we'll see you next month at ANZ Facebook Live. Thanks for joining us.